So could you walk us through the liquidation process and how you think, because the worried customers will be thinking, oh, what happens to my money? And then could you just walk us through the liquidation process and how you think the customers can receive their deposits?
The customers' deposit at this point, is not at risk. The CBN has appointed Nigerian, Depository Insurance, Corporation to take over the liquidation of the bank, and I believe the NDIC will look into the books. Certainly, will be able to identify all the customers who have deposits with the bank, and then, in essence, that's why banks do have, capital deposits with the CBN. It's because of these kinds of issues, such that when banks fail, the CBN, in collaboration with other relevant authorities, can then look into what is available in terms of what can be paid to customers. And the CBN recently has also been checking with loans, to be approved by banks, where it will not exceed the limits that can be, taken over when there is, failure or acquisition or liquidation, such as we're experiencing with Heritage Bank. So I believe that depositors' funds are safe with the bank, and the liquidator will certainly look into the books and know exactly who needs to be paid what, and where assets, even the banks, in this case, the Heritage Bank's assets, whether there are underperforming loans or there are, assets that are outside that needs to be recovered in order to make up for what the bank needs to pay at this time. So I believe that the banks, the depositors are in safe hands, and I don't expect any, unwarranted risk to be undertaken by depositors.
I recall many years ago when Heritage Bank came into the scene, a lot of persons were excited about, the bank itself and what it portended for the sector. What do you think could have happened in the process? Where did they miss it?
You see, the banking, as you're aware, the banking space, I wouldn't say it's a bit saturated, but then again, is that it appears saturated, and it is highly competitive. I know there are emerging trends you see new generation financial service institutions or financial service companies springing up, and this puts some of the old generation banks into some constrained environment. They have to continue to keep up in mobilizing capital to stay afloat. And if you're not able to do that, certainly just a few years down the road, you begin to feel the heat. And I think that's exactly what Heritage Bank is feeling at this time. Many of these banks actually do not qualify, for, a full commercial, bank operation. Some of them would better stay at, micro level, where you have microfinance institutions, and they do not, qualify for the properly classified DFIs. And it appears that the distress is now what Heritage Bank is facing at this time. And the CBN, pointed it out that these issues needed to be resolved, especially with regards to operations and capital requirements. I believe the CBN wanted Heritage Bank to scale up its capital base, which it was now struggling to do, and then perhaps maybe transactions may have overshot the capital base, and the CBN needed to regulate that process to make sure that we don't put, of course, like we discussed, ultimately depositors at risk. And I think that's what it is right now. For me, I think the CBN needs to continue to look into the system and do its work properly. And that's why I personally give kudos to this present governor of the Apex Bank, who appears to have shelved away other responsibilities that are not directly associated with regulating the financial institutions in Nigeria. He appears to be very focused, concentrating on the work and, aiming at the target. And I think this is one of the results, saying that this bank cannot continue to operate under this environment. We need to, rein in at this point.
Unlike some financial analysts who would disagree with you, they believe that the current CBN doesn't really look at helping some of those banks, those banks that are having challenges, to see them through their trying times. Unlike the last administration under Emefiele, which where we saw that several banks, including Sky Bank, now Polaris Bank, Keystone Bank, Union Bank, and Heritage Bank, faced severe financial challenges, but were bailed out by the central bank. So they're saying that this current administration could have helped, do the same for the Heritage Bank, so that it can be seen through its trying times, and then until it's finally sold off. What do you make of this?
Well, the Apex Bank had already pushed forward the need to recapitalize. And I think that's what we need to get, first and foremost. The bank, is giving sufficient time for these institutions to look into what can happen, whether in form of merger, whether in form of acquisition, or whatever process they need to, or whether in form of mobilizing, extra capital outside of the current, environment. The bank, the CBN has provided the working process, the process flow of how it wants to, ensure that the banks recapitalize. That recapitalization is what we're dealing with now. So I don't think the CBN is the one to facilitate, a takeover of the bank. And those are some of the issues that we had with the previous, governor, where the governor was directly involved in facilitating takeover of banks, acquisition, merger, and all of that. These are also independent institutions on their own, but needed to be regulated by the regulator. I think what matters is the regulator, making clear the issues, and if there are new regulations that need to be put in place to strengthen the operation of these institutions, I think those are the responsibilities of the regulator. I don't think that at this point, especially because the CBN has mentioned that these banks will be recapitalized, and this is the timeline. The CBN had set the timeline for that recapitalization. So the CBN would need to watch closely those that can scale recapitalization, those that will be in distress, those that will probably need some extra intervention like it is doing right now. But certainly the intervention I expect the Apex Bank to introduce will not be the one to facilitate merger, acquisition, takeover, liquidation, and things like that. When the banks have truly, exercised symptoms of liquidation, then the Apex Bank will need to step in. Where the banks, are proposing to merge with other institutions, then the banks will allow it. The Apex Bank will allow it. Where the bank is, aiming to be acquired by a more stabilized financial institution, then the Apex Bank should allow it. So I think that's the role of the Apex Bank. And in the case of this Heritage Bank, I think what is clear now is that it will not even be able to, to recapitalize or to even be acquired. I assume that, for instance, behind the scene, there are proposals that have been placed on the table of the government or of the CBN in terms of meeting the recapitalization requirements, and those that wants to merge, perhaps looking at the timeline that was proposed by the Apex Bank previously, I believe by now proposals would have been submitted to the Apex Bank Those that want to acquire which bank will have made that proposal. Those that want to merge will have made that proposal. And those that want to, increase their capital inflow, perhaps they are not interested in merging or being acquired, they would have also made that proposal. I think I want to assume that Heritage Bank is probably left in the rain, and the CBN will not allow it to collapse with depositors' funds, and that's why it's taking this step at this time.
Well, from reports, there are talks about